Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Mr. Sydney Brownwood.
Thank you. Oh, you're so kind. Hello, good evening, and welcome to this, the TooFatLardies Oddcast. Tonight, I'm joined by two of the hobby's larger-than-life characters, the veritable dastardly and mutley of wargaming, Mick Skinner and Richard Clark. Gentlemen,
Cue the mutley laugh.
Gentlemen, I trust you're well and back in the swing of things now that the festive season is well and truly over.
No, not well. Full of cold, so I'm going to be spluttering all the way through this. But thank you, Sydney.
Yeah.
Hello.
I've not been swinging, so I'm fine.
You've not been swinging.
No.
Well, the year is yet young. Richard.
You give up on your New Year's resolutions.
No, all good, and back in the swing of it. Things is about right. We have just done our first couple of events of the year with Penarth and Sharp Practice Day down in Bristol at Bristol Independent Gamers. So all of a sudden, real life has returned, and the sort of luxury period over the holidays where I've been messing about with jungle and stuff is now a distant memory.
So there's hardly any time that you've actually not been wargaming or wargaming show visiting.
Well,
that's
that's
a few weeks.
That's very true, Sid. Actually, I mean, January is pretty much the period where I can take some time off because we're not doing events until the first event of the year. It's Penarth in Wales, right at the end of January. So my Christmas actually starts when my wife and kids go back to work, and I can just get on with skiving and not doing things that are vaguely work related, but that I enjoy doing some fun stuff like making models.
That's good. That's very good.
But you've had a pretty busy time. We're going to catch up on that, I know, but you've had a busy Christmas. I think we all have. Sid, you've been busy chap and enjoying your break.
I've not had much of a break, really, but we'll come on to that in a moment. But it is a busy time of year because you finish with Christmas and you think, oh, well, I'll just take it easy for a few weeks. And it doesn't really seem that way. Families, work, hobby, it's a busy time for a lot of people.
Mistress.
Oh, not on the public podcast, please. Which one, anyway? Anyway, all good stuff, but enough of this, because it's time to crack on with the show and walk a path across to the Lardarden workshop to see what you've all been up to.
Mind that, Sydney. Mind the vice. You don't want to get your bits caught in that, mate.
It's quite a large vice, isn't it? I mean, it did almost catch something which is unfortunately not tracked by it.
My vices are massive, Sydney.
Well, as we move into the crowded workshop, I mean, literally, it is an Aladdin's cave normally, but I mean, this looks ridiculously intense. There are boxes piled high.
Yeah.
I'm seeing religious artifacts. I'm seeing jungle everywhere. What on earth has been going on?
Sometimes I wonder how I keep from going under, Sydney. It is like a jungle sometimes, but particularly when I've been building jungle sometimes. And I have been. Lots and lots of it. And you can see it scattered everywhere. And as part of my big jungle build, I've been doing jungly bits. I've been doing with lots of big palm trees and high standing jungle. You can see that over there. And I've been doing the low standing jungle, which is kind of more sort of ground cover. And I've been doing some bamboo sections, which you can see all spiky over there. But I've also been doing a sort of plantation area. I built up, the buildings that you bought me were fabulous, the Malayan buildings for Christmas, and thank you for them.
Lovely present.
They were very nice, yeah. And but what I thought was, okay, it's all very well doing that, but let's think logically. We're doing Malaya. The place is full of rubber plantations. I've ordered a big bag of rubber trees from China. They're not rubber trees, they're trees, but fortunately rubber trees look like trees. Whereas the banana plantations that I do look very specific. The rubber trees just look like trees. And I thought, well, what I really fancy doing is create a setup where we've got a rubber plantation, so we've got a rail line coming in, a little railhead, we've got an administration block, we've got a station, we've got a warehouse, then we've got a couple of large colonial bungalows. One belongs to the rubber plantation overseer, the other one belongs to maybe the district commissioner, and then alongside that we'll obviously have the buildings belonging to the workforce who are in there. So I've been having an MDF fest over Christmas and then January, and I've also, as you quite rightly say, have created a nice Buddha lost in the jungle, covered in vines and creepers, and I've got a few other bits and pieces that I can still work on for later in the campaign when we go up to India.
And in the jungle, sort of the mighty jungle, do you have any lions?
Lions, I do, but they're asleep tonight, Sid. Fortunately.
And you've been making these buildings, and you can see them here. So they're a mix of MDF, and some of them have the card as well that comes with them. So the card is weaker. Yeah. And you're strengthening it. You've got loads of PVA splashed liberally everywhere.
I splash it all over.
Yeah. Does that make a massive difference, do you find?
Yeah, huge difference. It just adds strength. It especially when you're dealing with card, it sort of soaks in and gives it a real, not just rigidity but also flexibility. I find PVA is the modeller's friend. But what I've done is, as always when I make MDF models, I think, well, what's good about MDF and what's not so good about MDF? And sometimes things like roofs, where they have those very flat roof tiles, I usually like to re-roof them. But what I've done here, if you'll excuse me, I'll just move quickly over.
Because we are in a real workshop, just in case people didn't think it was
as
a real
opposed to
workshop.
fantasy workshop. That's what I've done, and I'll bring these over to show you.
Those are lovely.
I've got 3 of them, so we can look at them together.
We can each look at one each.
What I've done is I've done a mixture of Will's corrugated iron on the
nice
roof,
stuff.
which you can
It's
see,
very nice stuff.
and I've used green stuff to create some thatch on a couple of them. One of them I used just a load of card and paper to create what is effectively plant fibre, which they use to roof it with.
Is that out of your shredder? It looks like it could be.
It does look like,
out of the shredder.
actually, it does look like that. Had I thought of that, I would have just put this paper through a shredder rather than spending hours
Cutting it to
chopping it
individual
up.
lengths.
But you can see that,
You can see
Sydney,
who's the brains of the outfit.
that is the sound of paper reinforced with PVA.
It is nice. It is nice. And I think that they look,
And look,
more
I can
irregular, don't they?
Whip
like that as well.
my lid off. And and I've added paper here to give an extra dimension to it. And in some areas, I've added just little bits of paper in here to represent the plant fibre buildings, which just give it a little bit more three-dimensional feel. Because one of the issues with MDF is it can look two-dimensional. But really pleased with these. Selection of manufacturers. But that's me. That's what I've been up to.
Well, hang on, and they're based as well though, so they're on stilts. These buildings, aren't they? So you could have the stilts unprotected, without a base. But these are all based. They come based.
They do come base. Yeah, the base is part of the kit on all of them.
Yeah, but do you make them therefore in 2 parts so you can do the detail and terrain on the basing before you stick the building down on top?
No.
How do you work that?
I make the whole thing. Well, basically, I use a paintbrush, a long paintbrush, and poke it underneath the building with PVA again, and then chuck a load of sand under there, and then just dry brush that again with a big pig bristle, kiddies' school paintbrush.
Yeah.
It's robust as anything, and you just wiggle it about.
I always think with 28mm training, you're holding, not great on the podcast because people can't see it, but you're holding the building with the roof that you've done. And it's pretty rough and ready, and it almost looks like a cross-cut sort of shredding which you've just applied to the roof and you've actually covered it with PVA. I'd imagine when you were doing that, you might have had the moment of thinking, what on earth am I doing? Or maybe not. But actually when it's done, and it kind of has that macro sort of look which you get on a table from 7 or 8 feet, and it's really, really impressive. And I think that always contrasts really nicely to finely, neatly painted miniatures. You've got some very fine detail work on miniatures, but your terrain's a lot more
crap. Is that what you're saying? Are you calling my terrain
it's a lot
crap?
more macro than micro because it sort of sets the theme really well. I think.
Whatever that means.
Aren't they Romans? Macro and micro. Centurion macro.
It's a very good
Prefect micro.
one's tall and one's small.
That's right. They are actually. I've read the books. They're very
Is that
good.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's my idea just for a new series of books just like ended there.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Well,
that's
they're lovely.
So
that's
but
been
you're
keeping
going to
me
need some,
busy.
and you're going to need some little white stone. You know, well, what's it called? Whitewashed stones around the outside.
I thought that for the colonial bungalow. I've also got to build a
Nice.
tennis court. I'm going to build
Yeah.
a tennis court. So it's all going to be very jolly hockey sticks and gin on the veranda. A bit like every
my
day
house.
for you, Sid. Yeah. But yeah, that's been keeping me busy. So I'm really glad we've been able to entertain you with a really bad description of stuff that nobody can see.
Yes,
but
yes,
it
that's
has kept me
unfortunate.
busy, and there have been some nice buildings.
They're lovely. They're,
you throw them over into the corner,
Looking forward
please?
to seeing them in action.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I've got just finished last week. Just finished my first Japanese platoon, and I'm keen to get another Japanese platoon done and
good.
some.
Just put them over there, Nicholas, with the heavy
Yeah, yeah.
weights.
I was,
Yeah.
I was comparing them in size because obviously these are 28. I was thinking about the Airfix bamboo house.
Do you know what?
Yeah, yeah.
They are very
Yeah,
much
which is-
reminiscent of the Airfix bamboo.
I,
house.
I have that in
20 mil.
in a scale that isn't too dissimilar.
Oh,
I'm just
132nd. or-
thinking about
yeah.
how close it looks to that. Really,
Yeah.
it's not too far off.
No, indeed. Well, the Airfix bamboo house was kind of just a thing of wonder when you were a kid and had all the Airfix kits because it was so unusual. It didn't look like any house
Didn't
you
look
knew.
like the strong point.
No,
No.
it didn't look like the strong point, which was another great one. Apart from the back of the sandbags were hollow, and you thought they're rubbish sandbags, aren't they? They don't have a back to them. But yeah, so that's what I've been up to, and I'm just coming up to going to do some railway line to go to
very
it,
good.
which I want to base. I was going to buy the Sarissa railway line. And then I picked about 10 foot up for £2 on eBay in an HO scale, and I thought, really, it's a puppet. It's only a game.
It is
So
only a game.
I decided that £2 was going to be what I wanted, and I'm going to mount that on 12.5mm MDF with chamfered edges, put a load of sand on it, and have a real
looks
jungle
splendid.
feel.
Yeah.
But anyway, Nicholas, tell us more about. Surely what you've been doing is more interesting than that claptrap.
Yeah, surely. I've been climbing aboard my little car, toot toot. So my mind is still buzzing from our trips to Arnhem, and we're thinking about Market Garden and how we're going to do some campaigns and games around that. So I've been into my airborne jeeps and looking at the Reconnaissance Squadron from Arnhem, researching it in terms of what it was actually designed to do and what its makeup was. So in total in the squadron you've got almost 40 jeeps broken into a series of troops. And what I'd like to have is actually put those troops into action on the table. So I guess you could say we've got jeeps. You'd have a British Airborne Force. You could have a support faction of a couple of reconnaissance jeeps, maybe as a support option, or you could actually have the Airborne Reconnaissance Squadron as the main unit. And so I've bought and made a whole load of jeeps, which has been fun and painful at the same time. And, there's only so many pinholes you can drill into wheels without wanting to throw the whole thing across the table. But one of the biggest dilemmas with those is whether you have them as crew or not. So I love toys that you buy, but I also hate the fact that you look at them and say, oh, that's a Warlord one, or that's a First Corps one, or that. I like to mix them, match them around, so that actually what I've got on the table is different. And that means using plastics as well to modify them. It means using bits from other ranges. And I was trying to decide whether or not I was going to use... did I want my jeeps to be crewed and therefore, have 3 guys stuck on the back?
Crude?
Crewed.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, as in to have a crew,
Right.
not as in... yeah.
Emblazoned with roots.
Well, they've got paratroopers in, so they probably would be fairly
Crude,
Cruise by cruise.
Yeah. Or whether you just want them actually as vehicles without anybody sitting in them. So in the past I've used little magnets to allow you to attach people on and off.
That's a nice way of doing it.
It's a nice way of doing it,
Fiddly.
but it just doesn't work with these particular jeeps. Because of the way the crewmen are cast and the way that a lot of the toys come together and the way that models fit into the jeeps, you can't do that. So I've had to put the crews into the jeep. So I was thinking, is it better to have them as just vehicles from which the crews have already dismounted, or do you want them as models that have got the riders on them?
Is there a compromise that you could have the Jeep with the driver and maybe one passenger? and then assume they're either empty or full, or
Yeah, you can.
buy 2 Jeeps.
Well, that's the other way, isn't it? And that's
There is
the,
no easy answer. It's the
No.
ACW cavalry, it's the 17th century dragoons. Do you buy 2 figures or do you buy a mixture?
Yeah.
Or do you have them
And
mounted or dismounted?
at
There
the
isn't an
end-
easy answer.
And at the end of the day, I've gone with the version that actually has the crew on the vehicles because they look nice.
They look
and
nice.
they
They look
look photographed and they look fantastic. So
Yeah.
we'll have a really nice unit, really nice squadron of.
Do you know
Of
what?
Jeeps.
Sorry to interrupt, but I have got some unmanned corgi Jeeps,
Yeah.
which I've had for ages and I've never really used. And what you could do is just put them on the table when people have got out.
Yeah, you could do that. And the airborne Jeep is slightly different, of course, because it was modified to fit into the glider. So it doesn't have the spare wheel on the back. It has the spare wheel on the front, and the front bumper is cut shorter. And there's no windscreen on airborne Jeeps either. So, and they've got the what do they call it? I was going to call it the Special K machine gun, but the Vickers K machine gun on the front. So they're different to the.
So what you're saying
standard
is
Jeep.
my kind offer is useless.
No, your kind
Publicly,
offer.
Ros refused.
Your kind
Yeah,
offer
I
is
think that was a
That's what
big.
we were
I think
saying.
that was a
Great
big 2
idea.
fingers to me there. Thanks, Nick.
What I'd say to you is, if you could convert them into airborne Jeeps, that'd be brilliant.
So rather than just gifting,
Yeah.
can you please convert extensively and then gift
Die-cast
them?
metal bill of toys, which I shall have to set about with a hacksaw and Dremel and spend 3 months on.
What are
no,
friends
Well, of course,
for?
and then the other side of that is, of course, if you make the decision to put the crews in the Jeeps, of course, you're making the work involved in making that Jeep 5 times worse. So if you just did a Jeep with a driver, that's easy. But if you then put
yeah.
another 5 blokes in,
I
the
do
Jeep,
hear what you're saying.
the
That's
work
true.
you have to put into it is
But
increased. That's taken me a long time.
it will look
But-
the dog's bits.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a fascinating. The way they use leapfrog tactics in these Jeeps is really interesting. We're going to talk about Reconnaissance, right?
We are.
We are. So what a fantastic thing to be modelling in terms of actually how we play that on the table would be really, really exciting.
What have you been making, Sid? Been making or doing anything?
I have been making and doing, but it was cut short by a work thing. So in the last podcast, I think I talked about participating in a painting challenge.
No,
But it was
right.
all going swimmingly well when I came back from Yorkshire for Christmas, and I'd got my figures all undercoated and back ready to start, and I'd got 6 figures which I was ready to start on, including one commander with a wonderful hat that I'd made. And then they got a phone call. Started at 6 a.m. on the morning of the 28th of December, and it's all going brilliantly. And I managed until about 10:30, and then I got a phone call from my work, and I haven't picked up a paintbrush ever since. So a sad story for the new year. So unfortunately, I haven't done a great deal of painting.
What was it? The reviews in from the Real Examiner?
Well, it's,
Nobody
Did
can-
you have to go and give all the money back to all the people who attended you in
all I can
Panto?
say, it'll be coming to the silver screen.
Oh, right.
Near you
oh,
very
oh,
soon.
darling.
Let's be truthful. Let's be truthful. Somebody has to collect the trolleys from the car park.
And those bottles in the bottom of the canal.
Very true, very true.
Anyway, so enough of that nonsense. But what I would like you both to think about, or all 3 of us to think about, is what have we bought recently that we'd like to bring to the attention of other gamers? And what you would perhaps describe as being the best bit on the bench.
The best bit on the bench.
The best bit on the bench.
Who's the boy with the best bit on the bench?
Who's?
Well, that is the question which we are going to answer.
So is this a new section in the show? Sid? The best bit on the
Is
bench.
Indeed, the best bit on the
Best
bench.
bit on the
is
bench.
indeed
Me.
a new.
Me.
Well,
BBOTB.
it is a new section.
The best
It is a
bit-
new section.
and how do you say it, mate?
It's called the best bit on the bench.
The best bit on the bench.
The best
I
bit on
love
the
that.
bench.
Right. Okay. Well, I'd say that at the moment I have got the best bit on the bench in that I'm not going to name one product, but I'm actually going to name a range of products by Sarissa Precision.
No.
Because I mentioned deciding that I was going to do my plantation setup with the railway station and the administration block and the warehouse and so and the bungalow and so on and so forth. Well, I had a cast around online, and I had a really good thorough look through Sarissa's website, and some of the buildings on there I picked up that were all from different bits of their range. For example, the station, I picked up the El Alamein station, which is absolutely fabulous for any colonial situation. You could use it anywhere in Africa, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, anywhere. You could use it anywhere in the Far East. Absolutely brilliant. So I picked that up. In the colonial range, I picked up a low-level building, so single-storey, but wide, about a foot long, and that's a perfect rectangular administration block with like 3 or 4 little doors going in. You can see one room being the pay room, another room being inquiries, another room being the office of the administrator. And then from another one of their ranges, I picked up a little old-fashioned warehouse with the sloping roof and with the lights, the light windows on the roof. And then from their colonial range, I picked up a colonial bungalow, which is a huge thing with a stoop running, veranda, as you guys call it, running all the way around it, which is a brilliant building. Now, with none of these buildings have I taken them and put them together and just used them as they are. I've added bits on. I've done things with things like the corrugated iron on the roofs. But as a basic model, these models from totally diverse ranges on their website have all come together to create what I think is a really plausible looking little jungle outpost for Malaya, or Malaysia as it is now, but Malaya then. And I'm really, really pleased with these. And the even better news is that Sarissa have confirmed that their products will work with chain of command, because there was some doubt about this, wasn't there, Nicholas?
There was.
Yeah, their advertising led us to believe that their buildings were only suitable for another popular set of rules, but fortunately, we were able to ask them on behalf of many of our customers who were deeply concerned that their Sarissa models wouldn't work with chain of command, but the official word is they do.
It is wonderful when you get that official confirmation.
I think that stamp of approval, and it's good to see. And seriously, you can see why Sarissa won one of the awards from Wargames Illustrated magazine last year for, I think, I don't know what it is, some of the swankiest bits you can get in wargaming, probably, because they are very nice.
Possibly an award for the best bit on the bench, January 2019
and certainly this month they get the best bit on the bench award. That's right. Talking of which, we actually got 2 awards from Wargames Illustrated magazine, didn't we, Nick? And one of them was yours, mate.
Yes,
Water tanker.
Gleaming on the mantelpiece.
Best new. Do you polish it regularly?
I do.
Right, and the trophy?
I do.
And the water tanker best new game for 2018, as voted by the readers of Wargames Illustrated and anybody else who fancied taking part in their online survey, which was great. And Chain of Command, of course, got its 2nd award, best game 2 years running.
Yeah,
so
brilliant. I mean, Water Tanker is really humbled and surprised to get that, because actually it beat some good games as well. Actually.
Good game.
Good game. So
It
that
did.
was really topped off a great year.
And actually, funnily enough, we thought there was no hope because we released it so early in the year, we thought everybody would have forgotten about it.
Yeah.
But no, nobody's forgiven you yet.
Stayed in our
And it's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the best bit on the bench goes to Sarissa this month.
Right.
Well, that is fantastic. So I think on the back of the best bit of the bench, what we'll now think about...
Next time we'll do that together.
Yeah.
We'll now think about adjourning from the workshop over to the sofa of contemplation for our next part of the show. Gentlemen, welcome back to the sofa. As we know, when we're looking for which big issue to discuss, we normally look to the post bag to see what the listeners are asking. So I had an email recently from Carlos Escobar in Rio Gallegos in Argentina.
Golly gosh.
Rio Gallegos. Carlos said, "Hello Sydney, we love your Oddcast and listen to each episode many times. Please maybe have a signed photo of you."
Wow.
Wow.
Wargaming is not big in Argentina, but my friends and I are loving Chain of Command and have recently discovered I Ain't Been Shot, Mum. We were wondering about how you and the Fat Nick and Rich consider the importance of reconnaissance in wargames. Do you deal with the issue at all? Well, I saw Carlos' email. Carlos, thank you very much for that. And I thought, well, that is a really good issue because I think reconnaissance is something which is a key part of warfare, obviously, a key part of tactics. It has a strategic dimension as well. How do we try and replicate that in our wargames on the tabletop and indeed all sort of wargaming? I thought that was a great topic for a big issue. So, I'm looking at two people with their heads in their hands.
Yeah, well done,
it's
Carlos. Great question.
Well,
Thank you. I'm glad you told him we were doing reconnaissance earlier and not me.
It is a big issue, and the reason my head is in my hands is because it's kind of a difficult thing to know where to start and where it finishes.
Well,
really.
often the problem is that we don't represent it
Exactly.
in wargaming. So that's possibly why we're hesitating slightly, because in so many games the action begins after the reconnaissance has happened. One of the things I did when I was attempting to write Chain of Command, I did succeed in the end. One of the things that I did was I wanted to introduce a concept where people would consider the terrain that they were fighting over and get them to look at the table and think about what their objective was and how they were going to achieve that and how they were going to use the terrain as favourably as possible. And that was very much the driver behind the introduction of the patrol phase, the concept being that before the action has started, you have sent patrols out, your enemy has sent patrols out, and it's an opportunity for you to seize certain salient points that are important, to defend other areas where you want to keep the enemy away from them. And it does encourage people to think about the terrain on the tabletop before they actually start the battle. Now, that is reconnaissance, but it isn't reconnaissance in every respect. It's simply local reconnaissance before an action. If you like, it's patrol. It's more a case of patrols than reconnaissance.
And that local reconnaissance normally comes through when the umpire gives the briefing. So the umpire will give the briefing and they will say, you don't know where the enemy are, or you think they might be over in that wood, or they say this is the key road that goes off to such and such a place. And normally then the player will often respond to the umpire and say things like, is the river fordable? Can you see the tree line from the top of that barn? All these kind of questions that are actually around local knowledge and information that just happen around the game by players talking to each other and by the umpire, and somehow you get an answer. If you're the umpire and a player says to you, is the river fordable? Well, some umpires will know the answer to that because they would have thought about it in advance, and other umpires will be put on the spot. And it's how they come up with the response to that then it constitutes reconnaissance in terms of the way the game plays out.
I think that's an interesting point, actually. If we're looking at scenario-based games, part of the concept of scenario design is to make sure that you as the game designer and presumably the umpire, or at least the person who's going to be presenting the briefings to your opponent, are in a position to have thought about what information do people have prior to the action beginning, and that becomes pertinent. But I think one of the issues about reconnaissance on the tabletop is potentially it's difficult. I mean, we played a really interesting game where we had a US reconnaissance force made up of greyhounds. What are they, M8s?
Yeah.
M8 greyhounds and jeeps. And their objective was to drive through, see what was happening in a town and see if there was a route through it. And we did this about 6-8 weeks ago, and the guy who was playing the Americans put the jeeps on the table and they drove straight through the town and out the other side, and that was the end of the game. Which potentially is a very successful mission. He actually got one jeep damaged and the crew had to abandon it. They got picked up by another jeep and they carried on driving off the table.
I think that's often the difficulty with reconnaissance. I mean, I thought this was a good topic because it kind of is about framing which games we play, as well as the process of reconnaissance. Because, I mean, in an earlier period, reconnaissance is perhaps all about actually finding your enemy. where actually are they?
Absolutely
Are they a
right,
mile away? Are they actually 50 miles away?
Well,
And the process of identifying where your enemy is and finding them through scouting, through the assimilation of rumours, the sifting of intelligence, the use of spies, all of those aspects go towards actually identifying where the enemy is and then acting accordingly.
yeah, interesting point there. If you look at the age of Napoleon and you look specifically at Napoleon, one of the reasons he was so successful, and also you can apply this to von Molt, is the emphasis on advancing with your forces dispersed, but bringing them together at the point where the critical action is going to take place. Now, there are risks involved in that. If you have a force of, let's say, 100,000 men, and you've got them in 3 columns of 30,000 men each, they could be caught by the enemy and defeated in detail. But the key there was the use of reconnaissance troops so that you could identify where the enemy was before they identified you. So your reconnaissance troops had 2 purposes. One was to identify where the enemy were, but the other one was to stop the enemy identifying where you were, and then bringing your forces together at the critical point.
But it's also, isn't it, about reconnaissance, about actually how you can move your army through the terrain that's in front of you, or even where you are. I mean, we tend to give gamers very good maps, but actually we have to remember that people don't always have those maps in reality, and it certainly as you go back into different periods of history, then the reliability and accuracy of maps is very different. And so reconnaissance is also about finding out, at what point can you cross rivers, at what point do you, how far are you from the nearest population centre, or what the roads like from there, A to B.
We've been doing a lot of research recently into the Operation Market Garden. And one of the things that the British recce troops were doing were driving up on the flank of 30 Corps, trying to identify alternative routes through, and trying to identify not just where there was a bridge crossing a river, but could that bridge take the weight of certain vehicles. And that was absolutely key, because the maps they had were largely based on pre-war Dutch maps, which were several years out of date at this point, and a lot of those bridges potentially being blown up in 1940 by the Dutch as they retreated. I mean, you look at Joe's Bridge, where Operation Market Garden started from. That bridge had been destroyed in 1940. So the question was, what was the temporary structure that was there like in terms of how effective was it in terms of load bearing?
And I think just from discussing just those aspects, one starts to have a different appreciation of getting to the tabletop, because already we're talking about finding an enemy, we're talking about the importance of rivers, crossing points, bridges, what's the lowest crossing point, what's the highest crossing point, how to access getting your forces from one place to another, the coordination of forces. And that's all the action before the game actually starts. And to me, the reconnaissance seems to be a strategic phase, which then narrows down to the tactical phase. But just as we plan our scenarios in a way that's controlled, we talked about this before, having a scenario which is fair in its general sense to the 2 different players or teams of players who are playing, so each have an incentive to play. I think the difficulty I've found, or we've found with reconnaissance, is actually it can become quite unbalanced. So you have one side who reconnoitres very well, your sort of jeeps passing through the town with impunity, and you've got another side which isn't reconnoitring as well. And before you know it, you haven't really got a contact which has as much of a chance as you would in just a single one-off scenario.
Well, this is very much my experience of playing 19th century Kriegspiel. The entire Kriegspiel game is very much about identifying where your enemy is and then bringing your force into action to fight them at the most advantageous point. And so often with a 19th century Kriegspiel game, once you get to the battle bit, the game has already been won, because one side has out-scouted their opponent and have clearly got there fastest with the mostest. And in that situation, the battle is almost a moot point.
And in that sort of context, how do we do we actually want to replicate reconnaissance? Because as a separate game or part of the same game?
I think you can replicate reconnaissance, and I think some really fascinating games you can have as doing that. So, for instance, a great way of getting reconnaissance, of course, would be a prisoner snatch. So going in the First World War, going over to the enemy lines to bring back some prisoners was a form of reconnaissance. That makes a fantastic scenario in its own right for something like In Love and Blood.
Yeah.
Also for Chain of Command, actually, this idea of imagine if those same jeeps that had gone racing through that table the other day in the game that you played. Imagine if their brief had been to come back with some German prisoners. Now that would have made a very different feeling, or gin, or anything like that. Yeah, that would have had a very different feeling to the game, and even games where you're pushing against an unknown enemy, and it may be that your brief is to find out to what extent do they hold that town in section strength? Are they there in company strength? What armour do they have with them? The game could be about finding that out. It doesn't have to be about creating a victory. It could just be an intelligence gathering game, and that's really valuable, I think, and has merit as a Chain of Command game.
Those games have a lot of fun because the reconnaissance elements which are used are not always those which appear on a heavier tabletop, let's say.
Yeah.
Certainly in the ancient period and the horse and musket period, the reconnaissance troops have a particular character to them themselves. The sorts of hussars and the Croats and scouts, and earlier period with skirers and prickers, and right back to sort of Thracian sort of cavalry. They have a character which is particularly apposite to reconnaissance, which you'd lose if it was just a straightforward sort of battle between two forces. And I think it's the same with motorcycle armed troops, your reconnaissance jeeps.
Yeah.
Some of the reconnaissance sort of forces from the Second World War, they have a character which, if you put them in a main battle line, they're just going to be blown away pretty quickly.
Can I counter that somewhat by saying, yes, I would agree with you, and I think in a horse and musket situation, fighting an action between two scouting parties would be perfectly legitimate and good fun. However, in a motorised environment of World War II, whether we're talking Chain of Command or I'm in Shotmum or whatever, you have potential there for those troops to just drive along and get off the table. Now, I do wonder, and that then becomes a non-game. It becomes a game which is not satisfying for either side. I do wonder whether there's room for utilising a pre-game mechanism, and I'm not talking about the patrol phase. I'm actually talking about playing it out as almost a Kriegspiel on a map, in order to then generate the actions on the tabletop.
Mm. And when you think of the distances that those reconnaissance troops in somewhere like Russia would be covering, that does make perfect sense. I think you've got different assets and attributes which you're attempting to reconnoitre in an open area of terrain, which doesn't necessarily lead itself to sort of wanting to gain that.
No, I mean, you could almost say, let's say in a pint-sized campaign, Chain of Command, that if you have got reconnaissance troops attached to your force, you would never actually see them on the table in the game. It could simply allow you to out-recce your opponent, or at least, I don't know, maybe have a situation where both sides rolled a d6 to see whether they'd out-recce their opponent. But because you've got specialist recce troops, you add +2 to your dice, which means you have a sneak peek at the table of the next game before your opponent does. So, I mean, that is one way of representing you having those assets with your force.
And we actually did that with the Lutzen game, you might remember, that we had both sides had light horse, the Swedes had the Finns, the Imperials had Croats, and they allocated those to a pre-scouting game. They faced off, one of them won the scouting game, which enabled the winner of that scouting game to see the Council of War plans which had been deployed by the other side. And then there was the chance for them to use some of those forces in a raid on the enemy's baggage. And there's the sort of things that you can do where you introduce into the game the concept of reconnaissance, but you abstract it to a result on the table. If, as you say, you don't really want to make a whole game out of running around on motorcycles.
Well, motorcycles are an interesting one because in 1940 and 1941, the Germans used their motorcycle troops not just as reconnaissance troops, but they were their main strike force because they were the fast-moving troops. So when they got into action, they'd get off their motorcycles and fight as infantry. So they're an unusual one. But then again, the Germans are unusual with reconnaissance in as much as, for the British, the objective is to identify the enemy, to report that back, and then get the fudge out of Rog. Whereas for the Germans, the Aufklärungsforce, I mean, if you read Hans von Luck's book, Panzer Commander, which is a great title because he never commanded panzers. But if you read his book, he commands the Alclarens, the Reconnaissance Battalion of 7 Panzer in 1940. And his job is not just to identify the enemy. His job is to find the enemy, beat them up, and force a gap in their lines through which the rest of 7 Panzer can pour. So you have doctrinal differences on those, not just the two sides, but between different nationalities. The Americans are somewhat more aggressive than the British, but not as aggressive as the Germans. Yeah, they're somewhere in between. So it's how different forces behave should really depend on their doctrines. Mm-hmm. And actually, to be fair, when you see a German Alclarens force, you can see it's made up the way it is because it's expecting a fight. They're expecting a punch up and they're ready to go. Whereas a British force with their little armoured cars and and no infantry are really not after a fight.
It's about eyes on.
It's about eyes. That's right. British. Another issue actually with reconnaissance, which was interesting, which came up in a World War II Kriegspiel that we did, was the issue of a radio net and how that works. Yeah. Because often you'll find two different sorts of radio nets. So let's assume we've got a reconnaissance troop. The platoon, the troop commander may well have a big posh radio set which allows him to talk to headquarters 10 miles away, 15 miles away. Whereas the other armoured cars have only got a range of, let's say, a mile. So they can just talk to him. Or 2 miles, depending on terrain.
And that's a reconnaissance factor which goes out throughout history, isn't it? Because it's one thing to be able to have scouts reconnoitring and actually having eyes on with the enemy, which, if you like, is the sort of the horizontal level of reconnaissance. But getting that back vertically to the actual general or the marshal or the command unit in the field is something completely different.
It's only any good if that happens, isn't it?
It's the issue of the classic issue in Kriegspiel of how fresh is that information? All information, by the time they get it at the top of the tree, is likely to be slightly stale. Well, you have to decide not only, that information is interesting. The enemy are in Lardville, but that was how long ago, and where could they be now?
So at one end of the scale, you've got ultra intercepts, telling you that there's major movements going on or whatever, and the other end you've got a French farmer who's giving you a piece of information that may or may not be accurate, valid, useful, whatever.
So I think where we're coming down to it is that there are a lot of issues which we don't necessarily always see on the tabletop. It's a particular brand of issues with reconnaissance.
But we do see it on the tabletop, though. And then do you want to talk about how we do that? Because if you look at on the patrol phase in Chain of Command, now you would argue that is partly the reconnaissance playing out for the game, isn't it? It's the pre-game phase that really is.
It's tactical, not operational.
Yes, but then of course within the game itself, you have troops carrying out a reconnaissance role on the table.
That's true.
So look at the way the Americans would use their scouts, for instance. Yeah. You could argue that's a form of reconnaissance within the game. You can have partisan teams attached with local information that might influence the way that you make your decisions. It's all about finding out what you can, isn't it? Then acting on it.
I think that's true, and actually that's why in Chain of Command it's always wise to, the first thing you really want to do is identify where your enemy's forces are, so you know what you're dealing with, and that's why in many ways it's always wise to leave troops off the table so you can react to an unexpected threat. So that concept of reconnaissance is very much there within the game, that one of the things you want to do is oblige your opponent to deploy all of his forces, or as many of his forces, so you can then choose the point where you're going to attack them most effectively. And if you've left forces off the table, left a reserve there, that's when you can deploy them to best effect. That's part and parcel of the whole reconnaissance knitting in with the tactical decisions you make. But I do think, I'm not convinced that representing reconnaissance units is always successful. Nick's talking about his airborne recce jeeps. I'd be really interested to see him make a good scenario out of that, because he's potentially painted an awful lot of figures
And you've
to
given
have them
yours.
have them either A, drive across the table and that's the end of the game, or B, drive up a road and be shot to bits.
But I think there's
as happened by Setcraft's troops.
And there's a sophistication here, isn't there, between the operational and the tactical reconnaissance, and I think that's really interesting. It's borne out by what you said. So we've got operational reconnaissance aspects to campaigning or fighting games, which could be abstracted, and then we've got a tactical tabletop reconnaissance aspect, and both are feasible, both are possible, perhaps even as part of the same game. And it's really a question of whether those troops which are used in different roles, operationally and tactically, do they equally have a place on the tabletop?
And I think it is really important that we don't allow ourselves to forget about them.
Yeah,
Because, so
I agree.
we tend to not really worry about that which isn't represented on the table. So we ignore field ambulances, and we ignore engineer support troops, and we ignore supporting artillery in all but their effect and how they hit the table. We don't. Certainly in chain of command, right? The way the game is structured is you don't have artillery batteries on the table.
You don't have artillery at all.
In IBSM, we don't really have artillery on the table. It's normally off table. The downside of having things off table is they're easily forgotten about and they're easily discounted. And therefore, when you're thinking about the game and the way that the campaign unfolds, you don't really think, are these guys out advancing there? Well, what's going on with the artillery? What else is happening there that affects the way that artillery influences the battle? And therefore we can't afford to have the same thing happen to reconnaissance. And there's another thing with reconnaissance as well, is actually they're really nice toys. They often have the loveliest pieces of kit, and modelers and wargamers are drawn towards them. The airborne jeeps, I agree with you. There aren't many scenarios where you can deploy a whole troop of them, but my God, they'll look good when you do.
Yeah, but I remain utterly unconvinced that we are. I remain utterly unconvinced that we can model reconnaissance forces very effectively in a tabletop situation. I really do think that you need
a challenge.
I think you
have a
can.
challenge.
I think you can do aspects of it. I think you can. So prisoner snatches, for instance, I think you can take the act of that reconnaissance and finding out to what strength does the enemy hold that village. I think that's a reasonable outline for a game.
Maybe our big issue, maybe a big theme for the year. Maybe we can see what we make of that during the course of the year and see how your reconnaissance jeeps, when they're finally painted and handed over by Richard, completed and converted, we'll see how they manage on the tabletop.
Yeah, right.
Well,
that could be a long way.
I will tell you how they're more likely to appear as an item in a British support list.
They're more likely to appear on eBay after they've failed to work in a tabletop action, I would
more likely to
suggest.
appear in the bin after I pieces.
But very good. Okay. Are we done on that?
Well, I don't know. I feel that I really do feel that we've let down Carlos with the fact that is a completely half-cocked answer. The answer is probably bigger than that. Maybe it's something we ought to return to and have it as a big issue once we've had a chance to give it some serious thought.
So, Carlos, if you'll allow us to pause there for a few weeks and months.
I'm biting my tongue.
We will be back to you, Carlos, including a signed photo of my son. What about that?
What about that, Sid?
Anyway, I'm talking of reconnaissance. Shifting slightly, I believe you two have been out on the road doing a bit of recce around South Wales and the West Country.
Wow.
Can you tell us about that, please?
We can. Crusade in Penarth, the opening batsman of the year. We went down for that. We missed it last year because we messed up our dates and double booked ourselves. But we were very insistent we wanted to go there again this year. I always love Penarth. It's a gentle easing into the saddle because it's a really lovely show. It's I believe Wales's biggest wargame show at Penarth, just outside Cardiff, and the guys down there are tremendously friendly, and it's just a really relaxed atmosphere. So as the first show of the year, it's a great one to slip into. And of course, on the way back, we stopped off in Bristol and went to the Sharp Practice Games Day, a gaming event at Bristol Independent Gamers, which is a fabulous venue. In fact, Sydney, through the magic of audio, we can whisk you there Now, ready for the time tunnel music? Whatever it was. Right.
Up and under, here we go. Are you ready? Yes or no? Up and under, here we go. It's the song of rock and roll.
Well, here we are, Nicholas. The motor's running and we're heading out on the highway on our way to Wales.
On the Welsh Highway.
On the Welsh Highway. We have, in fact, just crossed the bridge into...
Wales, it's called.
That's the one, yeah. Crusade I Cymru or
That's
something.
the one.
Yeah, absolutely.
It means abandon hope, all ye who enter.
Well, I think it does. And, of course, what it really means is that 2019 has now officially started on the Lard calendar. All this messing about I've been doing, messing about with jungles and pretending to do some work. This now is the moment when it all begins, where we do our first show of the year at Crusade in Penarth, the show we've been coming to for many years now, haven't we?
Well, I think you've been coming longer than I have. I think this is my third or fourth.
Is it? Oh, it's probably my 10th or something like that. But it's great actually as a first show of the year because it eases us into things with one of the friendliest shows around. And we're going to be doing what game today, Nicholas?
We have brought What a Tanker with us to do the Bartman Corner Overdrive scenario that we've successfully run before. It's a good game.
Good game.
Good game. It's one Panzer Ace versus all comers.
Absolutely, and I think that was covered in the Lard magazine, wasn't it? 2018 Lard magazine. Very, very special place, Penarth, for What a Tanker, because this is where we unveiled it to the world when the idea was nothing other than a tiny embryo of tanking.
Mate, that's exactly right. It was in Cardiff a couple of years ago, wasn't it now? 2-3 years ago that we first gave it its outing.
Yep.
That's good fun, so I'm hoping we can replicate a lot of that fun today and get some more people playing the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those scenarios, I think one of the reasons we like it is it gives an opportunity for people to play a really fun scenario, not competitive because it's one of those silly situations where you have like 5 tanks against 1, and what tends to happen is as tanks get knocked out, more people can jump into the game. Yeah. So it's almost like a conveyor belt game, isn't it, really?
Yeah, well, that's what we tend to do, is we have the Panzer, who's an ace.
Yeah.
So he has lots of bonuses going for him.
Yeah.
And up against him, we normally put 5 or 6 Shermans, depending on how many people we have at the table.
Yeah.
We'll play through as the Shermans get knocked out, because they tend to lose 1 or 2 Shermans before they get the Panther, at least.
Unless I'm controlling the Panther, in which case abject failure for the... But
it has been known for the Panther to get taken out very early. That does happen.
Yeah.
But normally when as the Shermans get destroyed, we recycle and bring on another tank, and normally I'll bring on the next level up Sherman. So they'll start with a 75mm Sherman.
Yeah.
Then we'll get some of them will be knocked out. Bring on a 76mm Sherman.
Yeah.
And slowly we can go up through the tanks. I've got the Pershing, I think, in the box. I think I have anyway.
It's a great
need it.
Great opportunity for people to understand A, what the bonus cards can do.
Yeah.
B, what an ace can do. C, what a fast tank can do, because Bartman is in a Panther, which is a fast tank.
Yeah.
But also to have an opportunity to see how the career ladder works.
Yeah, and it's also a chance for them to realise that actually teamwork matters when they play this game. It's often one guy goes charging up the table on his own, head to head, and he's normally the guy who's first one to get taken out.
Yeah.
But if they work together as a team and work around the flanks of the Panther, then you can get some really good outcomes in this. It's a good game to watch, good game to umpire, good game, as Brucey would have said.
It is, and what do points make?
They do indeed make prizes, my friend.
Well, there we go, mate. Right.
And however, this year we have, of course, a special bonus for anybody who plays the game.
Oh, really? And what would that be, Nicholas?
Well, everybody who plays the game gets a little signed photograph of our little chum Sydney.
Signed photograph of Sydney. Well, if that doesn't get people playing, I don't know what will, mate.
He can't be here himself, but he sent...
He sent himself
a paper-based alternative
in image. Right. Okay, brilliant. Well, maybe we'll be able to hand out a few of those to his adoring fans. So, if you fancy an effigy of Sydney, just write into the Oddcast. Tell us who you are, what your local club or what your local hobby store is, or what show you're going to be running a game at. Tell us what you're going to be doing, what games you play, what you enjoy about Lardy games, and we'll send you a signed photograph of Sydney through the post for you to dispose of as you will.
Does it come in a plain envelope?
It comes in a plain brown envelope with nothing on the front.
So
to,
why wouldn't you want one of those?
Quite.
Lovely. Well, maybe next year he can do a calendar. That would be super.
Yep, available in Woolworths.
Sydney show calendar. Okay, well let's get in deeper into Wales and see how the day goes.
Yep, we'll be bringing news to you from Penarth, talking to some of the movers and shakers in the scene that is Welsh wargaming. Okay, well, here we are at Crusade, and I'm joined here by show coordinator Glyn Williams. Glyn, I've been coming to Crusade for, 10 years now. Always a great start to the year. Nick and I were talking in the car saying how relaxed and friendly it is. But how long's the show been going, actually?
Well, good to hear you've been supporting us for 10 years, Richard. Thank you very much. The show itself is currently in its 24th year.
Blimey.
Seems a long time, but it's gone by pretty quickly.
We must have been small children when it started.
One or two of us. I guess a few of the others were still in rocking chairs.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So, 24th year this is. Things going to plan at the moment. We've introduced a few new things this year to try and develop the hobby and expand the offering we've got at the show. There's a big D&D offering this year.
Fabulous.
So we're hoping that'll catch on.
Especially with the younger gamers.
Absolutely. We've been doing programmes with the local schools on that front as well. So we're hoping to see some benefits from that, but it may take a little time to feed through. Might be next year, the year after.
Well, these are seeds that germinate in their own good time, don't they? And talking of schools, I mean, when I first came to the show, you were in a leisure centre. That lovely smell of chaps been playing all sorts of sporting games and sweating profusely. But here we are in a rather luxurious new venue, which is a big school on the outskirts of Penarth, so huge venue, much more airy. You moved here, 3 years ago?
This is our third year in the venue. The school is a brand new build at the time. So, very modern facilities, great car parking, and it's really turned out to be a good move for us.
Yeah, loads more space, lots more elbow room for people to wander around, see the games, see the traders. So a great new venue. If you haven't been before, you should put it in your diary for next year.
Very much so. Last Saturday in January, and we'll be here.
Always a good one. Right, thanks so much for your time. So all the punters due to arrive in a minute. The question is, are you ready, yes or no?
Well, we've got until 10 o'clock to be ready.
Right. Okay, mate, great to see you. Cheers.
Many thanks. Cheers, Richard.
Here I am at Penarth with Guy, editor of WSS. Guy, I think many of the people that listen to the Oddcast have been writing in and asking us, when are you going to get a haircut?
Probably never. I'm very sorry. I'm sorry to let you down. I'm a bit like Samson, you see. If I had, my haircut, then, I'd... I wouldn't be.
You'd lose your editorial powers.
I would indeed.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Right. You're going to be using this, so I'm going to be very careful what I say.
You have, good. Well, I'd hate to see you shackled to a couple of large pillars and bringing down Caravanserai.
Well, I haven't had anybody called Delilah yet. So
well, she laughed no more. Anyway, lovely to meet you, Guy. I hope you have a really good show. Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.
Okay, well, we've had a great time here playing What a Tanker. And, I'm talking to a gentleman here. I'm talking to Ralph from Walthamstow. Ralph, you've come a long way today.
Well, yeah.
Was it worth the journey?
Definitely. It's
Yeah,
been a
no,
really fun show.
you didn't get involved with playing Water Tanker, but you were watching most of the day, so...
I couldn't get close to the table, it was that busy.
yeah, it was that busy, wasn't it? Okay, do you find shows in Walthamstow this busy?
No, generally not. That's why you have to travel the far to
right.
sample a bit of the atmosphere.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. Well, it's good to know you enjoyed watching Water Tanker today. We've certainly had a good time. And who's this over here? I'm talking to Kevin. Kevin, you've come down from Chester.
Yeah, it was a long drive, but I think it's been well worth the time.
Right, and you've spent some time playing Water Tanker today.
I have. It's pretty much all I've done, to be honest.
Right, great. And you had a couple of notable successes, didn't you, really? You took out the Panther in the last game.
I was a very lucky roll at the end, and I think, to be honest, some of the other players had done a lot of the work, but I did get in the killing blow, and I feel, totally excited and vindicated for my car journey.
Right. Okay, that's great. Right, nice to speak to some of the guys who've come here today, and there we go. Well, here we are in Bristol at Bristol Independent Gamers, and I'm joined, or more to the point, I'm joining David Hunter, who's been here all weekend, running a Sharp Practice campaign day. Now, what I think is really interesting, when a lot of people think of games days, they think of competitions, but that isn't the case as such here, is it? It's not that simple, where people fight each other and get points. Or is it? I don't know. Tell us about the format of a campaign day.
Okay, so the idea is it's a French and Indian war setting. So
Yeah.
you have to have a French and Indian war force. But
Yeah.
you can bring your own models
Yeah.
painted
Yeah.
along to it,
Yeah.
which is then different to, say, a typical Lardy day where you're
Yeah.
turning up and you're playing on a beautiful table
That
with
somebody's
other
set up.
other
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
have provided the models for. So you can choose your force pretty much as you like within
Right.
the broad constraints of the game, to a predefined points total. And often I think people look at points totals and go, well, that means competition. And it doesn't. It's just a rough guide. I'm not too bothered if people are a bit under, if people are a little bit over. A rough guide, so that they then got a force, and you'll turn up, and for each side we'll have a force commander who will be the senior officer, and that's generally the player who signed up first for that side is put in charge.
Very egalitarian way of doing it. Yeah, absolutely.
And so regardless of their personal preference or competence for being that overall decision maker, that's who they are.
They're lumbered with it.
They're lumbered with it.
Yeah.
They will then assign you to a table usually with a partner from your own side, and you'll be against two people from the other side.
Brilliant. Okay.
And then you will fight. For instance, we've got one battle where the British are landing by boat from Lac Sandu, and they've got to force their way up the heights of Gideon onto what's really a very broad, open, European-style battlefield, rather than your typical French and Indian war troop thing.
Masses of woods,
And they've got to force their way ashore.
Right.
And so what we had in the first game was they got beaten back.
Right.
So in the second game, they could have another go.
Right.
One of the players was the same. One of the players had been replaced by somebody else.
Yeah.
They managed to get a foothold. So now we're on the third game. They don't have to climb up the cliffs at the beach.
Right.
They're much further forward, so they're already an advantage, and now they've really got to press on and get off that table and into what's really the more the French heartland. Meanwhile, on other tables, we've had wilderness encounters where it's all trees and forces have blundered into each other. And then, say, the French have won.
Right.
They then are moving on, and they're beginning to penetrate to the British settlements.
Right,
and their Huron allies
Yeah.
are maybe coming in with the intent to burn log cabins and kill settlers.
Right, okay.
Because that's how they win.
Right, sure.
And that doesn't necessarily conform with what the French want them to do.
Okay.
But the Huron can't win unless the French do better than the British.
Right, okay.
So they've got to help the French.
So interesting balance of power issues to be taken into account, as well as what's happening on the table with the game. You've got to keep your eye on the big picture.
Ideally, yes, and generally speaking, people will often fail to do that because they are overloaded with what they're doing in the game.
Yeah,
but that's
absolutely.
really part of the fun.
That's part of the fun.
Is that it's almost like you get in the Kriegspiel games that you've run, where your decision making is overloaded. And then I add into things like the commander can give strategy cards.
Right.
For instance. They're randomly dealt. You might have 6 for your 12 players. So the commander decides where they go.
Right. Okay. And at what point they're played? Or?
You can play them at any point you want. So you might have one which is paddle your own canoe.
Right.
That lets you use the length of a waterway.
Right.
As a deployment point.
Right, okay.
And that could be just for skirmish troops,
Yeah.
or it could be for both skirmish and line, depending on how many canoes you've got.
Okay.
Which can completely turn a game.
Right. Yeah, sure.
But you could also have ones. I've got one Sing Toro Row, which makes any grenadiers elite, rather than regular. So they give you a boost potentially, but it's got to be the right card for the right player at the right time on the right table, which again is more decision making for the commander. And it might sound quite complicated. But actually, if you've got the cards...
You're focused on what that one card can do. Or if you're the commander, you've got to decide where you dish them out.
Yes.
Okay, and so when people win games, lose games, do they gain points, lose points?
No. My view very much is that your men are in Star Trek terms they're the red shirts,
right? Okay,
or the red coats. You're going to get replacements from your regiment and stuff like that. Your force. I don't mind if people want to change their force from game to game,
right? Sure.
So long as they're not scribbling down between game trying to adjust the points. As long as they've come with 2 or 3 different force lists, and I'm this is what I'm using this game. That's absolutely fine. You mix it about a bit.
Brilliant.
Your leader has to stay the same, your overall person, and then he has a card which will define his personality.
Right.
And this is where your dreaded scoring system comes in.
Okay.
So, for instance, you might have one where he's a sort of backwoodsman type, and so his tasks really in every game are to try and launch an ambuscade.
Right.
They're always to fire from cover.
Right.
And they're to something else along those lines. Or you might have one guy who's he's a glory hunter, so he's got to fire the first volley of the game.
Right,
He's got to launch the first fisticuffs of the game.
Okay.
And you get various points depending on how hard I think those things are going to be to accomplish. And you just keep a score of those. And at the end of the weekend, the person who's accumulated the most of those points, his leader, is the guy who's the footnote in history. He gets the half page in the historical accounts. Whereas other guys, they're just fallen from the historical record because they weren't big personalities.
Absolutely.
And so it's the scoring is more to do with the role playing game aspect.
So it's a case of writing your name in the history books rather than winning the battles.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, you could lose every game and yet have achieved quite a lot for your own personal glory.
Fabulous. And the whole place is full of people having a great time by the look of it, and some lovely terrain.
I mean, the standard of the terrain is generally a little bit lower than I would say you would commonly encounter certainly on the best tables on the Lardy days. Right. But that's because we're doing more tables for one specific period.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But they're still I would say of a reasonable quality.
Oh yeah, very nice indeed. I mean, none of those games would look out of place at a wargame show. So I think they all look great. They're really nice, and people have brought their terrain with them, and you're using terrain from.
But it's not all my terrain by any means, because there's no way I can do 6-8 tables worth of terrain.
No, absolutely.
So I'm very reliant on people, contributing suitable terrain for the period, and a lot of the people either have had it and have very kindly brought it, or some of the guys have spent the last 3 weeks just building trees.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the starting point. It's a bit like my jungle project, really. It's that green hell. It's trees, and more trees. Well, fabulous. That's brilliant. What I'm going to do is have a chat with some of the people who are playing and hear what they've got to say. But thanks very much for organising it, and thanks very much for telling us all about it for the Oddcast.
No problem. Been a pleasure.
Thanks. Right, well, here we are, and I'm talking to Carol. Carol, tell us about the game that you're playing at the moment.
Hi, Richard. This is a British village.
Yeah.
We have an aggressive French force whose job is to set fire to the village,
Right.
plunder it, drive off the settlers.
How very French.
Yes, and we have some perfidious Albion
Right.
chaps coming along to stop us.
Just,
and
right,
and
I
no
see.
blame of driving
Yeah.
the English.
Those are lovely French figures. What make are they?
They're warlord.
Are
They're
they?
all warlord.
They're really pretty.
We have the Régiment de Guyenne as line infantry, and we have a lot of Compagnie Franche de la Marine.
Right, oh, brilliant. Oh, lovely.
Who are basically our hotshots.
Yeah, it's such a colourful period, isn't it?
Very much so, yeah.
And I believe you're the Commander-in-Chief for the French side.
I am, yes. I'm hoping that today will be as good as yesterday because
Right.
we were slightly ahead.
You're winning,
today.
right. Well, that's good to hear. And I hear you've all got personal objectives that you've got to
Yes.
write your name large in the history books. I was just talking to David, so...
some of us have fisticuffs type objectives.
Right,
others,
okay.
Others around shooting.
Right, okay, good.
I'm not
Well,
entirely sure we have a house demolition objective, but we shall see.
you're looking to set one yourself. Right, brilliant. Well, thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us. I'll let you get back to the game.
Okay,
Thank you. Cheers. Right. Well, here I am with Joe. Joe, you're from Crawley.
Crawley Wargames Club.
Right. Is it a bit creepy in Crawley?
A little bit, yeah.
Right. Okay. And tell us about what game you're playing here.
So we're doing French Indian War sharp practice.
Yeah.
So I'm playing as the 35th Regiment of Foot.
Right.
I'm not sure what D's got there. 60th Foot. Yeah.
Right.
We've got Regiment Artois on the other side.
Is that to do with Stella Artois?
Something like that. We thought it was suitable for the game. Really, to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah. They both fought the 35th and the Artois fought at Louisburg, so we thought we'd do them both together.
Yeah. Lovely.
It's me and Lee, sort of regular.
This looks like a real line up and fight, slug it out fest, if such a word is possible.
I think it is going to be. It's going to be a bloodbath.
The heights of, where is this? The heights of somewhere or
Lake
other?
Saindu.
Right, okay, great. It looks very much like the heights of Abraham to me, almost. Yeah, it's good. The heights of Jericho, is it? Right, brilliant. So, do you guys at Crawley play a lot of Lardy games?
Oh yeah, we do a lot of chain of command, a lot of sharp practice. We do French, Indian, Napoleonic, ACW, Indian Mutiny.
Right, brilliant. Well, I shall have to come down and get a game. When do you guys meet?
Every Friday night,
Right.
and then the first Sunday of every month.
Right, Sunday's a good. Friday night, I might be otherwise engaged with the public house.
Oh yes.
But right, okay, fabulous. Well, great to meet you, and good to see you enjoying your game of sharp practice.
Pleasure to meet you too.
Cheers, thanks. So here we are. I'm with Jenny. Jenny, tell us about the force you brought along today.
I brought Rogers Rangers along with me today.
Rogers Rangers. Cool, that's a bit groovy. Where are they?
Down here.
Hiding amongst the tall trees.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah, as you'd expect.
Yeah, and a good weekend?
Yeah, excellent weekend. Yeah, had lots of fun. Great group of people to play with, really relaxed, chilled.
Beer and curry last night?
Oh yeah, beer and curry, definitely.
Beer and curry.
Yeah,
got to be on the
definitely.
agenda, hasn't it? There's some fabulous looking tables, aren't there? That's what
yeah,
David said to me earlier. He said, well, the tables aren't quite as good as you'd get at wargame shows, and I'm thinking, yes, they are.
I was going to say, a lot of them are
Complete
far
rubbish.
better
Yeah, they
than you
are.
get.
They really are. And you're somebody who builds your own terrain, has got a real eye for detail. There's some great looking games, aren't there? Really good. Right, brilliant. Well, lovely to speak to you and great to see you again. And continue to have a lovely day.
Thank you.
See you then. Bye.
Don't stand there looking pretty.
Okay, I'm joined by Lee. Lee, you're here for the sharp practice event. You've been here for the whole weekend. Tell us, what you're enjoying about the whole sharp practice and lard experience.
It's the social side of it. Everyone gets on. We were out for a curry last night afterwards, and we were talking about that everyone here was really nice and friendly, and we think that's a result of the rules. They're not a competitive set of rules. They're to tell a story, and that attracts a certain kind of person.
Yeah.
And everyone is here to have fun, not necessarily win. We've all got beautiful painted armies. The tables all look good because
fantastic,
the backdrop, the scenery, your set, and your cast, your figures on it, looking good makes them the story better.
Yeah.
The other thing we picked up on last night is that we're playing French Indian Wars. There's not a great deal of mix in troops. There's not a single identical army here.
No,
so
sure.
there is no killer build of army.
No.
Everyone's taken interesting armies to have fun and play an interesting story with.
Yeah.
And it's made it really interesting. You've got everything from D's 60th light of 6 units of line, Death Star to armies entirely of Hurons.
Yeah.
And everything looks different and is telling a great story.
Real mix, isn't it? And you play a lot of Chain of Command as well, I believe.
Yeah, we play Chain of Command and Sharp Practice. We've done a lot of the Sharp End campaigns. We've done quite a bit of Ducks as well.
Right,
We've done an AWI and French Indian Wars and American Civil War campaigns with Dawns and Departures, which both played really well. And we'll be kicking off a Napoleonic one later this year.
Great. Oh, well, you'll have to keep us informed of how that goes. But great to hear you having a good time. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Cheers.
Cheers, thank you.
That was really interesting. So now, let's stand up from the sofa, wander along the landing in Roundwood Towers and head for the Lard Island Library. I'd like to see what books we've got in there, which might be of interest to Carlos, with his interest in Reconnaissance for wargamers. So chaps, what have you brought? I mean, for a start, Richard, that's a huge tome you've got there.
That's what all the librarians say, Sydney.
No, they don't. All librarians say shh.
That's true. Well, I brought a couple of books along, which are sisters almost, written by the same guy, which I haven't read yet, but are so beautiful because I've looked at the pictures.
They do look fantastic.
One book called Scouts Out by Stackpole Books, by a gentleman called Robert Edwards. A History of German Armoured Reconnaissance Units in World War II. This is a lovely, lovely book. It's effectively pornography for wargamers. Loads of pictures of armoured vehicles, loads of pictures of uniforms, loads of pictures of big jugs with all sorts of reconnaissance things on beer. Steins.
We call them tankards.
Steins.
Yeah,
Tankards,
they
not
are
jugs.
they are whoppers.
They are whoppers, aren't they? So that's the first book, and the second one is called The Tip of the Spear. Now that's not where you take your rubbish, Sid. That's a book about German armoured reconnaissance in action in World War II.
That is a good book.
And it very much focuses on German armoured reconnaissance in action in World War II. So North Africa, Barbarossa, the whole thing. Once again, it's wargamers porn in as much as it's beautifully and lavishly illustrated. So those two are quite nice. I just thought I'd whip them off the shelf.
These are both wonderful books, aren't they?
They are lovely books. They cost a wonderful
Splendid
price
photos.
as well, Sydney. I had a choice of buying a small house or those two books, but they were actually on offer at one point. You've got a leather jacket like that.
I was
haven't
just
you,
thinking,
Sid?
it's suspiciously like my own leather jacket.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
We should move quickly on from that.
Well, here we are. I've got another book which I read and really enjoyed. It was recommended to me by wee Derek Hodge up in Edinburgh. Hello, wee Derek. Shout out. Signed picture of Sydney coming to you in the post. Only the Enemy in Front. The Recce Corps at War, 1940 to 1946. And very much an Anglo-centric view of how reconnaissance should be done. And really taking us all the way through largely Italy, bits of North Africa where they're learning their lessons, but that was primarily Tunisia, because the Reconnaissance Corps was a newly formed unit and actually disbanded at the end of the Second World War. So, yeah, an interesting book. I really enjoyed reading it. It was very good. But unusually, my selection is an Osprey book. Now, I'm always a little bit dubious about Osprey books, and the reason being is that they publish an awful lot of books on a huge diverse number of topics. And sometimes I find them good, and sometimes I find them bad, and sometimes I find them in the middle, and very rarely do I find them to be excellent. However, World War II Combat Reconnaissance Tactics by Gordon L. Rotman, who I believe is a US Army veteran, is actually very good indeed, and it takes a lot of manuals from the period and looks at how reconnaissance was undertaken, and it does highlight some of the differences of the way different nationalities went about doing things. It's just if you're interested in reconnaissance tactics and really are starting from a blank sheet of paper, it's a really good primer, and it picks up some really lovely little illustrations from books at the time. So the one we're looking at here is from a US manual showing the movements of M8 armoured cars and jeeps to establish a roadblock. Just really lovely the way they show how the two types of vehicle in that unit cooperate and work together. And just a nice book. And of course, being an Osprey, cheap as chips. Some lovely pictures, some really good little sort of tactical maps to show you what's going on, and nicely researched. Good.
And a
Really
great
enjoy it.
primer in a discreet area. Yeah.
Sydney, you hit the nail in one.
We'll see if we can hit the nail twice and move over to.
Well,
Nick.
yeah, I've got my laptop out, and the reason I've got my laptop out is because the books I'm talking about are actually available in electronic format. Yeah, and it ties in really nicely to what you were talking about there, because those diagrams that you were talking about in terms of how the M8s etc. are used, they often come from document. Let me say this again.
Books.
Produced by the relevant army. So the Americans, as many armies, did produce field manuals. That's the word I'm looking for.
That's the word.
Field manuals. And the University of Texas, where
all my exes live.
Yeah, the University of North Texas, in fact, which is a bit further north than most of Texas.
Just south of Tennessee.
Yeah. Has a whole load of online material, including tank destroyer reconnaissance platoon manual, field manual. So these are available to view online. The whole manual is scanned in. All the diagrams that you were just talking about in there are available. And so if you go to University of North Texas Library and search for field manuals, I found this by searching for reconnaissance platoon. You get the actual field manuals which the guys are using to carry out their daily activities in the field.
They are brilliant. Actually, what's interesting is you're using your laptop to view them. I have a file on my computer called Lard Library, where when I find manuals like that, I download them and keep them, because one thing you can be sure is that those documents will remain online until the day you want to look at them, when the website will have been removed and they will no longer be there. So when you find stuff like that, download it and show it on your cloud so it doesn't take up all the space on your main machine, and keep those manuals. They are such good reading, and when Nick and I are working together developing rule sets, this type of stuff is our bread and butter.
Yeah. And there is another excellent book which I wanted to use for this part of the podcast, but I can't because I don't have it yet. And it's a book that I didn't buy when we were at the Hartenstein Museum, and I should have done. And it's about, and that's actually a book that Jasper had with us on the tour, which was about Freddie Goff and the Specials reconnaissance team.
I was looking for that. I couldn't remember the name of it.
Yeah, so I have a little friend of mine who lives near Evesham with a little beard. You might know him. Little Aid is sourcing me a copy of that book at the moment, but it hasn't come in yet, so I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on that, because I'm hoping that it's going to fill lots of gaps in the detail. You can search online.
They didn't have it at Hartenstein Museum. I looked, and
I'm
wasn't
pretty sure
there.
I saw it there.
Did you? Oh, well, I looked and
or
didn't see it.
maybe it's one that Jasper had in his hand that I'm picturing that we should have mugged him for. Actually, we should have given him a wallop on the head and run off with his book.
I'm seeing him.
Wallop him on the head and run off with his book.
I'm seeing him next week at Poldercon. in the Netherlands, the artist formerly known as Holland.
So it's by it's I think it's called Freddy Goth Specials. It's by Bob Hilton. Now Bob Hilton, I'm pretty sure, is also the guy who's on lots of the Battleground Pen and Sword videos.
Right. Yeah.
And I think he is an ex-para himself.
Right.
Really hopeful that's got some good information in it that will help.
That's one of those books that you potentially need a small mortgage to purchase, but my God, it's the type of information you just can't get anywhere else.
Sydney?
Well, on to my book, which doesn't take a small mortgage. I got this one for £20, actually a bit less than £20. And this is going back in time, and this is about military intelligence in the English Civil War.
I thought you got that for a Christmas present.
That
was maps. That was drawing maps, wasn't it? Yeah.
So this is called To Walk in the Dark, Military Intelligence in the English Civil War, 1642 to 46, by John Ellis. And it's a really great book. And it starts on the point of one of the statements by the Earl of Clarendon that although two armies were but 20 miles asunder, when they set forth both marched the same way, they gave not the least disquiet in 10 days' march to each other, and in truth it appeared afterwards neither army knew where the other was. And that's kind of the impression that people used to maybe have of the English Civil War. It's just armies blundering up against each other in the road, happenstance through rumour that each army knew where the other one was. And what John Ellis does in this book is a really great summary of exactly how an army in the early modern period, and maybe anything before, the 19th century, finds its opponents and takes them into action. So it's a question of reconnaissance in its truest sense, sifting of rumours, intelligence through local population, and also the use of spies, which in the Civil War is always prevalent. Very difficult to tell whether one person's on the other side, everyone's speaking the same language. And it's a really great description of how the campaigns in the English Civil War happened and how military intelligence developed and was really pushed forward by both the Royalists and the Parliamentarian forces to quite a sophisticated point. And it was the first time I'd read about, in just a single book, the different ways and tactics which were being used. And that also, funnily enough, has a big section in there about military manuals and the importance that military commentators at the time placed on finding your enemy using wonderful people like a scoutmaster who would be used to specialise in finding the enemy and training people to be able to sort of scout out what they needed to have and disseminating information back to the command. So in a similar way, this is a one-stop description of how it worked in one campaign, and military intelligence and reconnaissance working together. And that's really the kind of stuff which wargamers love for a campaign. You could build a whole campaign just around some of those aspects of trying to find your enemy, work out where you thought they were, and then bringing them into battle. And once you have that strategic advantage in the early modern period, numbers really do make a difference.
This is our challenge then, isn't it? You've got to design a game for reconnaissance in that period.
There we go.
Fatty here's got to do a reconnaissance for Arnhem, and I'll have to do a reconnaissance for something else. I don't know what.
Well, reconnaissance for Arnhem, of course. You can do aerial photographs, Rich. We used to have a game where you fly over the battlefield really quickly. Do you remember in the old days of wargaming?
I can't fly now.
No, but you remember in the old days? Remember the old days you used to do? Sometimes you used to gather around the table and look at the table, and the umpire would say to you, have you had a good look at it? And you say, yeah, it's all right. Now go outside and make your plan.
Make your plan, yeah.
That's all your reconnaissance you get, mate. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, Sid, John Ellis. Not the John Ellis that wrote Sharp End of War. This is, I'm guessing, a different John Ellis.
I bet it's the same.
I'm just reading on the back there. I'm not sure if it is or not. I'd be interested to know whether it's the same John Ellis or not.
Well, while we check out Mr. Ellis and whether he's the same one in Sharp End of War,
reconnaissance required there.
I think we've got some reconnaissance to do. I think we've just got time from a couple of emails from listeners. So first off, we've got Joe McGinn of Crawley Wargames Club. He's written in to say that the place to get your large gaming fix in the West Sussex area is Crawley. The club regularly plays Chain of Command, Sharp Practice, Dux Britanniarum and IABSM, amongst others. And you can check out Joe and the Crawley Raw Games Club on Facebook. And Joe tells me that right by the M23, so access is really great. So best of luck with that, Joe. Great to see you at one of the shows.
Big selling point, the M23.
Yeah.
Good to see it being used properly.
I could also tell you that if you want to know more information, you can email them.
Yeah.
Okay. And their email address is this: info at crawleywargamesclub.org.uk. That's info at crawleywargamesclub.org.uk. Don't forget the UK bit, very important.
That's right. And the Crawley War Games Club bit, don't forget that bit, or you're buggered.
Well, moving from the UK, we've had an email from Jeremy Spurlock in San Diego, California. Jeremy's one of the organisers of the San Diego BAR Gaming Club. And they're
Great name.
Great name. And they're attending Kingdom Con in April 2019. And the guys are planning on running Water Tanker as a mini campaign during one of the days. So why not go and see them in action at the Crowne Plaza Hotel in San Diego, California?
Why not?
Kingdom Con runs from the 11th to the 14th of April. Check out the programme for full details. Best of luck, Jeremy, and everyone who's attending that.
That's great. My family are going to be in New York at that time, so that's...
Well, that's really handy for San Diego. They could drop
Couldn't
in.
be further apart. But seriously, thanks very much to Joe and Jeremy. Signed photos of me, Sydney Roundwood, will be in the post to you both. If you'd like your club or event mentioned on the Oddcast, then please do contact us, and we'll try and give you a shout out.
So signed photos of you are available now?
Yeah.
Only to very special people like Joe and Jeremy. And Carlos, of course. We promised Carlos earlier. So three given out each show, but then they're not just thrown out by like confetti. They will be treasured items for everyone, I'm sure.
What will they go on eBay for?
Well, they are signed.
No, nothing.
So that's all for tonight. Thanks as always for joining us, and we'll see you again on the next podcast. My thanks to Rich and Nick and to Roger and the boys who are going to play us out. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
In tonight's show, Sydney Roundwood was joined by Nick Skinner and Richard Clark, with music by Roger Barraclough and his band.